In her own words, Libby Moore describes herself as a life coach, speaker, storyteller, adventurer, and creative connector who loves inspiring people to reconnect to their possibility in their lives and careers. Libby also worked for 11 years for one of the most influential women in the world, Oprah Winfrey, as her Chief of Staff. Libby was in Australia last year when I first heard her speak, and she had her audience completely mesmerised. I'm so grateful to Libby for taking the time to sit down to chat with me. We chatted for so long that we're going to have to put our interview into 2 parts. So this is part 1. Hi, Libby, and thank you so much for joining me. I know it's day 1 from coming back from your holiday, so I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation with you.
Oh, thanks, Libby. Thank you. I want to start off with your childhood because you grew up in a small town in Maryland, and I've done a little bit of research on Maryland, and it's the birthplace of the American national anthem.
Yes, right. Please don't ask me to sing it or recite it. And I love how you say Maryland. I love that.
How do you pronounce it?
Maryland.
Maryland. Ah, okay. There you go.
I love that, Maryland.
I'll get it right next time. But tell me about your childhood, what it was like. Because Maryland looks like the most beautiful state.
Yes, it really is. And by the way, you can call it Maryland. I like that even better than just Maryland.
Oh,
so, yeah, it sounds
you.
great. And my mother's name is Mary, so she would appreciate that.
Oh, well, that's lovely. Well, that's the Aussie way of saying it.
I love it. Maryland. So I grew up in Maryland in the United States, and I grew up on the eastern shore of Maryland. So it's right 10 minutes from the Atlantic Ocean, a tiny little town called Berlin. It's about, growing up, it was about population 3,000 people. And it was very remote in a way that it was a 3-hour drive from the biggest city, which would be Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., or Baltimore. And it was a very agriculture-driven area, chicken farms, farms, cornfields, soybean fields, sunflower fields, things like that. And I really, I'm the second of 4 kids. So I have an older sister, younger brother, younger sister. My parents just celebrated their 58th wedding anniversary 2 days ago. So they're still living in Berlin, the house I grew up in. And I just feel very fortunate. I feel that I had a fantastic upbringing. My parents really instilled in the 4 kids integrity, how to work hard, loyalty, friendship, the core values in life. And those people in that community were always very supportive and caring, and it was a beautiful place to grow up. We played out in the yard. I was really into imagining things. So my brother and I would make BMX bike tracks in the yard, or think we had motocross, or I would pretend like I was riding a horse, an imaginary horse, around my yard. And as a kid in high school, I wasn't that great at academics. It just bored me, and I'm probably slightly dyslexic, undiagnosed. So it would take me forever to read a book. It just felt like labor, especially reading books that I was told to read as opposed to what I wanted to read. So what I really loved doing in high school was making collages instead of doing my homework. So in the 80s, I made a lot of collages on my bedroom floor. In the 90s, they were called vision boards, and now it's called Pinterest and Instagram. But to me, it all ties together because so much of what I made in those collages actually came true in my life.
That's so interesting, like a vision board almost.
Exactly. Yes, that's exactly what I was doing. Yeah.
Libby, now you're openly gay, and I'm interested because you struggled. You didn't come out until you were 27 because you were worried about what people would think. And to me, that's interesting because you grew up in such a beautiful, caring, nurturing family, and I would have thought that that you would have been more open with your family. But tell me about that journey.
Okay. I love that you asked that question. Um, my family is very loving and supportive and caring. At the time, I'm 54 years old. So I was born in 1966. I think in 1976 or 70, probably 1978, I was 12 years old, 78, 79, 12 years old, 13. And I thought to myself, probably earlier than that, but I thought I'm gay. Once I even understood what that word meant, I thought I was just normal. And until you start hearing, I think in fifth grade, the worst thing you could say to someone was, you faggot, you dyke, you homo, you lesbo. And I thought, oh my God, I know what those words mean. And they're talking about me. And apparently this is not okay. So it would be like me asking you, when did you know you were straight? You'd think, well, I don't know, never even thought about it. So that's how I felt. I never thought about, until you start realizing, oh, liking girls is not okay. So I should keep this to myself. But when you're in fifth, sixth grade, you're not really thinking about dating people, or at least I wasn't. So by the time I got to seventh, eighth, ninth grade, when everyone started having their first boyfriends, I thought I would have big crushes on some of my friends, and just thought, wow, I'm gay, but I'll go to my grave with a secret. And then as I got to college, I thought, I know I'm gay, but I will absolutely go to my grave with a secret. Because back to your question, at the time, I didn't believe that my friends or family would accept me as a gay person. I was raised in a small rural community. We went to an Episcopalian church. You're taught that it's a sin to be gay or to be divorced, for that matter, but we won't go into the Bible. So I just thought, wow, I'm a bad person and this is not okay. And I shouldn't tell anyone and I shouldn't act on it. So I didn't, until I was 27 when I came out. And as I mentioned to you in one of our earlier conversations, that when I got to college, I just really started drinking a lot of alcohol. I kind of started in like 10th, 11th grade to numb the feelings. And then I got to college and I just would eat, food, and alcohol to numb the feelings of what I truly felt like, to bury the truth of who I was. And I gained probably 60 plus pounds. I weighed 205 pounds. I don't know what that is in the conversion, but I was a size 20. I'm probably 6 or 7 dress sizes bigger than I am right now. And I just thought at some point I should just, I just thought I should just end my life, because why should I'm not going to be accepted as a gay person. And that was around 2021. I just didn't think that people would accept me as a gay person. That's why.
It's amazing how all those outside influences and what people say stuff, I think, but they don't really mean it. They say it without giving it any thought.
Yes.
And thank goodness things have changed now. People are more aware of and far more accepting. Libby, do you mind sharing with us your suicide attempt? Mm-hmm. Because I really think that I love your honesty, and I think we can all learn so much from what other people go through, and this really hit home to me when you told me about what happened. Yeah.
It's almost hard for me to hear you say suicide attempt, because there's a part of me that goes, I didn't try to commit suicide, but I really did. It wasn't like I went out thinking I am going to go kill myself. That's not how it happened. So I believe I was around 2021. I went to an all-girls college, women's college in outside of Boston, in Massachusetts, in the U.S. And I think I cannot remember if I was 20 or 21. So it was after that graduation. I went to a 2-year school and got an associate's degree in radio and television. And long story short, I had tons of friends. I was super popular. I was super social. I was always making people laugh, having a good time. And inside and underneath all of that, I just felt very, very lonely. And I felt that people would not love me and accept me for who I am if they knew I was gay. So from, let's say, 10, 11 years old to 2021, 10, 11 years of just telling yourself that over and over, I'm not okay for who I am naturally. I was born this way. Nothing happened to me. All my siblings are straight. I just happen to be gay, and people won't accept me. So that thought, that seed of I'm not worthy for who I am, was something that grew inside of me. And as I tried to suppress it with being funny or being the life of the party or, food and alcohol, it just got to the point where you can only press it down so much. And in this one night, it just felt like it got to here, like I couldn't breathe. It felt so uncomfortable not being myself. Never told anyone I thought I was gay, never kissed anyone, nothing, just in my head. So this one night, I was out with a bunch of friends. We had been drinking that afternoon and then went to dinner somewhere and had more drinks. And then we went to another bar and had more drinks. And then we decided, some friends and I lived in the same apartment building. Let's drive back to the apartment building. We'll all get in my car and then go to this other bar 30 minutes, 40 minutes away for last call. And it was pouring rain. We all drove back to the apartment. My other two friends came over to my car and they said, look, we shouldn't be driving. We've all had too much to drink. Let's just come inside. We're not going to go to the bar. I said, but you said you would go to the bar. It was just this weird moment. You said you would go. We don't want to go. You've had too much to drink. We shouldn't be driving. Let's just go in. And it was this kind of back and forth. And I was just adamant in going. I said, well, I'm going. And they said, beg me not to go. I said, I'm going. They said, drive carefully. They went into the apartment. I pulled off. And as I pulled off, I remember it was pouring rain. And on the radio, the DJ, the disc jockey, said, buckle up out there. It's raining cats and dogs, and it's not letting up anytime soon. And something in me just naturally reached over and clicked my seatbelt. Now, like I said, it was 2021. I've been driving since I was 16. I never wore my seatbelt, ever. This was in the 80s. People weren't always wearing their seatbelt then, And but something in me just went click. And again, I was just thinking at that point, I'm going to go to the bar over in this next town, and some friends will probably be there, and I'll have last call with them. So as I was progressively driving this route, and I went past the college where I graduated from, I'm listening to music. And I'll never forget U2's song, Where the Streets Have No Name, came on the radio. That album had just been released. And I just turned it up loud. And I just progressively, I'd been sad prior to that, and just progressively got sadder and sadder and started crying. And the thought that came into my head is, how can I live my life openly and honestly and happily? I can't. I just thought, I can't. People won't accept me as a gay person, so what's the point in living? And I just turned it up crazy loud. And in that moment, just crying, I just thought, what's the point in living? And I just pushed my foot all the way down on the accelerator of the car to the floor. And I was in a Volkswagen Jetta, and it just took off. And I remember it just going, it was in a 30-mile-an-hour zone. So I don't know what that is in kilometers, but it's very slow residential area, straight away. And then there was a hairpin turn at the end of this short little road. And I knew it because I had driven that road many times. And I was just crying, and the crazy loud music, and the car took off. And right before I got to that curb, something in me said, what are you doing? It was like a loud voice. I believe it to be God, the universe, my higher self, whatever you want to call it. And just that snapped me out of it. And I slammed on the brakes and tried to take the curb. And the car ran over the curb and slammed into a tree because it was pouring rain, and I was going crazy fast. And the car ended up being totaled, and I survived only because of the seatbelt, because that DJ had said that, 20, 30 minutes before. And just the short version is, someone called the police, the police came, blah, 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 blah. The point is, and the policeman came over and said, you should be thanking God that you're alive, because that car smells like a brewery. And, you know, you should be thanking God you're alive. And I was in complete shock. And I never told anybody that story until 2014. I mean, that was in 1986, 87. And I never told that story to anybody, I think, until 2014. I was speaking to a group of college students, and it came out organically because it felt like a time to share it. And I was always just very ashamed of that story and embarrassed about it. And yet I survived. And at some point I realized it's important to share that story because life is worth living. And I fortunately survived that accident. A lot of people don't survive that accident. And I believe that's why I do the work that I do now, because I understand how these negative thoughts in our head, when you keep saying it over and over and over again, can be detrimental to your life and your well-being. And I also know the flip side of when you're in a really good place and taking care of yourself and loving yourself, all the amazing things that come out of that. So that's that story.
Libby, when you first shared that story with me, and I thought afterwards, imagine if you had died that night.
Yeah.
And your family would have just thought it was a tragic accident. They would never have known the struggles that you were having and who you really were. So, and thank you for sharing that, you know, in amongst the embarrassment and the shame. But, and I also know that can bring up awful feelings too with the memory. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And I think, like I said before, other people's truths can really help others. So how, once you came out, how did life change for you?
So that was 2021. I didn't come out for another 6-7 years. So I came out at 27 years old. And I am very grateful to Maury Povich, who is a talk show host. He has a talk show in the United States. And I started working with him as his personal assistant a year after he launched the show, I think around 1992. I was 25 years old. So maybe it was like a year and a half into working with him. At the time I was 27. And he did a show called Coming Out Strong on his talk show. And it was 5 gay women, all very professional, had partners, some had kids, you know, and I'd never seen that before. And so I went into, I knew the show was coming on. I was so excited to watch it. I went into his office during the taping, the in-studio taping. I went into his office and locked the door so I could watch it in private so that people would not think I was gay, because I wanted to watch the show. And when the show was ended, I said to myself in my head, 95% of what those women just said, I felt my whole life. I know I'm gay. It's time for me. And I told my best friend a couple days later, you know, and she was incredible. She was super supportive and loving. And that was crucial to me, because she was not like, ew, gross, or what are you talking about? She just was incredibly loving and supportive. And I was so shocked. And this was a friend I went to college with. And then as I slowly told other people, my friends, my family, everyone accepted me and said, and my mom and dad even said, Lib, we just want you to be happy. We want you to be happy and safe. You know, that's what's important to us. And my mom in the beginning was very supportive. She did have a very hard time with it. You know, she told me many years later, she cried every night for 6 months, because as a mother, and I get it, even though I'm not a mother, she was thinking, what did I do wrong? You don't make someone gay or not. You cannot make a person straight, and you cannot make a person gay. You either are or you're not. And then there's every little increment in between. You know, there's people who are bisexual, or, you know, every little increment in between those things. It's not yes, no, maybe. It's just every little thing. So you cannot make someone that way. That's the biggest misconception. So for her as a mother, she thought, number one, what did I do wrong? Nothing. And number two, she had to mourn the dream that she had for me, because she thought, oh, Elizabeth will marry a man and have kids in the house with a white picket fence. Well, I can have all that stuff if I want. It's just not going to be a man in my life, you know? So she had to mourn that dream of what she thought my life looked like. And I understood that. And I gave her the space and the time to do that. So to answer your question, what happened once I came out is my life got better and better and better. I didn't know what it was like to live my life completely as me. I don't have to fake it. I don't have to pretend like I like this guy. I don't have to date some guy when I'm not even interested. You know, I can be honest and truthful, and the weight melted off of me. So over a number of years, I never dieted again. The weight just came off. I didn't need that shield anymore, you know, to protect myself. And my career took off. It wasn't like, you know what I mean? It was a little like, but I worked with Maury for 3 years at the show. I ended up working at Rolling Stone magazine for 4 years. I ended up going on to Chicago to work with Oprah Winfrey as her chief of staff for 11 years. Then I left that and I did, you know, the Libby Moore Gypsy tour for a year and took a year off and explored, and it was an adventure and just exploring life. And here we are chatting today. So my life at 54, I feel like it just keeps getting better and better and better because I'm being honest about who I am.
Libby, just going back to when you were working with Maury, so how did you get that job and how did you break into that industry? Because coming from a small town, and America's so huge, and I'm sure there's a lot of competition going for those sorts of jobs. So how did you get your foot in the door?
Yes. So I got to New York, and I knew one person there, one of my best friends from college, Jill Davis, who was a writer for David Letterman at the time. And I was actually sleeping on a futon in her living room in her little apartment in New York. And I really didn't know anyone. And I reached out, long story short, my younger sister's best friend from college, that girl's mother had a best friend who was an associate producer at the Maury Povich Show. So it really was like, you know, this little, through all these avenues. And I contacted that woman who was an associate producer. Her name was Carla Frank. And I said, hi, you know, I'm Maureen Moore's sister, and I would love to take you to lunch. I just moved to New York City. So I took her to lunch and I gave her my resume. And I said, if anything opens at the Maury Povich Show, will you let me know? And she said, sure. And she said, what do you want to do? And I said, I'll do anything. And I was 25 years old. And so she called me 3 weeks, a month later, and said, Libby, Maury needs a driver. Would you want to come in and interview for that job? And I said, what's a driver? This was in the 90s, early 90s. She said, you know, like a chauffeur. You pick them up at home, you drive them to work, you take them to lunches, dinners, whatever. And I said, okay, yeah, I'll come in and interview. No, in my head, Kelly, I wasn't thinking, yeah, I want to be a chauffeur, but I thought that will get me in the door to meet people. So I went in, I interviewed with his assistant at the time, Erica, who was lovely and became one of my best friends. We really hit it off. And she said, okay, thanks so much for coming in. If we're interested, we're going to have you come back in for a test drive. So they called me the next day and said, we'd like you to come in for a test drive. And I said, thank you so much for considering me. I've really thought about it. I know I could not give you a year commitment. So I'm going to pass on this job. But if something else comes up that you think I would be a good fit for, please let me know. And she said, completely understand. Thank you for your honesty. Will do. She got promoted like 2 or 3 weeks later, called me and said, would you like to come in and interview to possibly be Maury's personal assistant? And I said, yes. And I got the job. So that's how I got the job with Maury Povich. And I share all those little details so that people who are listening can say, oh, okay, so even if you don't like a job that you're being offered, you can at least get in and meet people. You just never know what doors open when you're open to the possibilities. So
people love honesty, don't they? And
yes.
I think sometimes we fall into the trap of putting expectations on ourselves, and they're not necessarily the expectations of the other person. Yeah. But if we can learn to be honest, and that's what people value, and you end up getting a lot more respect, don't you?
100%.
Libby, before I get on to Oprah, I want to ask you about breath and breathing, because I know that one of your philosophies is that breath is the bridge between chaos and calm. And just before you start what you're going to teach us, I want to tell you, when I read that, it really struck me because last year, and anyone who knows me knows how much I adore my animals and particularly my dogs. Anyway, I lost my dog, Audrey. She'd fallen into a creek and went into this hole in the bank, and I couldn't see her. And I was just beside myself, and it was from 7 o'clock in the morning till 1 o'clock in the afternoon before I found her. So I was just really distressed, but all day looking for her, and I just kept having this little voice say, just breathe and it'll be okay and you'll find her. And so I was trying to be calm, and I'd just stop and take some deep breaths. So I was so interested to hear your take on it.
Is Audrey okay now?
Yes, but I had the horrors for a week after, thinking, I found her, and and I was guided to the exact spot that she was. Yeah, it was incredible. It was a miracle I found her. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about that in addition to the breathing. So, because I love that you said something in me said, just breathe, deep breathing. So, just out of curiosity for you, what was that something?
I guess the universe and God talking to me. I kind of think God gets a bit too busy, and he sends, the universe and other ways, because I just don't think he can get around all our troubles at the same time. So whilst he's at the top of it and guiding everybody, I think the universe steps in. And
I love that. They're all working in tandem, right?
Yeah.
Well, so when you said what you're about to teach us, this is what I love. I don't really think of myself as a teacher, really at all. What I'm doing is helping remind people what they already know. I call it B2B, back to basics. It's not business to business. It's back to basics, the most basic stuff. So we're so distracted in life with a mortgage, rent, bills, social media, Facebook, Instagram, blah, 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 blah. It's like the shell game over here. When really, like right here, when we get into that calm, clear place, everything we need to know, it's there. It's in that place. And I'm not sharing anything new at all. This has been around since the beginning of time. I'm just expressing it in my own way that makes sense to me. So when I work doing life coaching or executive coaching, working with people, the foundation of that work is so basic. It starts with the deep breath and the slow exhale. Because when we're talking, we're all up here in our head, going through all these millions of trillions of files of experiences and education and, all this stuff. It's almost like our mind is like trying to look for the answer. Oh, here it is, But really, that's a distraction when you deep breath in through your nose, hold it for a few seconds at the top, 1001, 1002, and then slow exhale through your nose, relaxing your shoulders on the way down. Again, this is nothing new. Everybody knows how to breathe. By the time we've gotten to the third exhale or fourth or fifth, we're in such a clear, calm state. And to me, what it is we're tapping into this portal of energy, whether you call it God, universe, higher intelligence, high vibration, whatever you want to call it. I think we're all talking about the same thing and arguing over what to call it. That deep breath, slow exhale is the thing that pulls you out of your head and in alignment with that energy. And when we're tapped into that energy, you're tapped into this portal of this field, this electromagnetic field that we actually are in, of limitless ideas, solutions, creativity, inspiration, answers, on and on and on. So when you were frantic thinking, oh my God, where's Audrey? Something in you said, just breathe. That higher intelligence within you that's a part of you knew that if you could not be in the state of like, oh my God, my baby, then we can't think. We're all muddled, but when you do that deep breath, slow exhale, physiologically, if, you know, when we're anxious, our brain is producing cortisol, and that chemical is a stress hormone coursing throughout your body, which builds on itself, so it gets worse and worse and worse. The moment you're taking a deep breath, slow exhale, your body's telling your brain, we're safe, we're okay. So the brain turns off the release of cortisol, so you feel calmer, more relaxed. And as you continue to deep breath, slow exhale, I imagine it like visually, like you're pulling yourself into alignment with this higher intelligence that will tell you exactly where to go. Like you said, it told me exactly where to go look. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it did. It was incredible. Just amazing. Thank you, Libby. Now, tell me about Oprah.
So I was living in New York City. I had been working, at the time I was working at Rolling Stone magazine, Wenner Media, which is owned by Jan Wenner, who's the founder and publisher of Rolling Stone and several other magazines. So I was the second assistant. His other assistant, Mary, had been there for 28 years. Phenomenal. She taught me everything I needed to know. I'm a big believer in hindsight. Looking back, I see how each job came into my life and why it came into my life and how that prepared me for the next job and ultimately prepared me for Oprah. And the 11 years with Ms. Winfrey is what prepared me for what I'm doing now. And what I'm doing now is preparing me for what's next. And I don't even know what is next, but I'm very clear that that's how it's all happening. So as I think I mentioned to you earlier, the reason why I moved to New York City at 25 is because I wanted to be a comedy writer for Saturday Night Live. And once I got there, soon after I got the job with Maury Povich. And so on weekends and at night, I was taking sketch comedy classes, stand-up comedy classes, improv classes, because in my mind, I thought, I am going to write for Saturday Night Live. Well, eventually I get to Rolling Stone, and I'd been there for, I think, 3 years. And I just thought, I really don't like being an assistant. And I got an interview at Saturday Night Live with the head writer. Someone had worked it out for me. I had this interview and I left that interview going, wow, I'm never going to work here. Because these are all older white guys that went to Ivy League schools with a ton of writing experience. That's not me at all. And I just know I'm not going to work here. So then I set my sights on the Rosie O'Donnell show. And she also had a talk show that was very successful at the time. And I thought, I'm going to be a comedy writer for her. So I started sending writing submissions every month to the head writer. Federal Express, 1 block from Rolling Stone to the Rosie O'Donnell show, to NBC. Anyway, long story short, never got a reply. So one day on the subway, riding the subway to work to Rolling Stone in New York City, I said this prayer and I said, okay, God, clearly you do not want me to work for Rosie O'Donnell or Saturday Night Live. And you know how badly I want it. So whatever it is that you want me to do, every atom, cell, and molecule in my body, mind, soul, and spirit is open to it. Show me what it is. Shine a big fat spotlight on it so I'm clear that's what I'm supposed to do, and I'll do it. Amen. And I just released that prayer to the universe, that intention, that prayer. I was just like, okay. Meaning like, clearly I thought I was going to be doing this and that's not happening. So whatever I'm supposed to do, just show me, be clear, and I'll do it. And I swear, Kelly, I think it was 5 or 6 weeks later that an email came to me. I was in this networking group called New York Celebrity Assistants, meaning assistants to celebrity. It's kind of weird how it sounds, not celebrity assistants, but like assistants to celebrity people or high profile people. And I was in that networking group. And there are about 100 assistants in that group. And this email came in from this woman, Trish Peters, and it said, I was contacted by a recruiter in Chicago. They're in search of a chief of staff, executive assistant to manage a high profile person's life. Responsibilities include, and it listed all these things. It did not mention Oprah's name. And the first thing said, coordinate private plane pilots aviation team. The second thing said, coordinate hair and makeup team. And at that moment I went, oh my God, this is Oprah. because Jenny Jones and Jerry Springer cannot afford a private plane. And those are two other people who had talk shows in Chicago. So I just knew, as I asked, make it clear, oh my God, in that moment, I thought, this is Oprah, and this is why Saturday Night Live and Rosie did not work out. And long story short, I sent my resume to the recruiter. She called me. We did another call the next day. 3 days later, I did a call with the president of Harpo Productions, Oprah's production company, and had an interview with him and the director of human resources. And then he said, well, Oprah's going to be in New York next week. Can you meet her at this hotel for a meeting? And we met in the restaurant of this hotel a week later. And Tim Bennett, the president, and Oprah. And and we had a meeting there. Should I continue, or that's how?
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to say how amazing it is that right back when you first saw that job, you knew you were going to get it, didn't you? Before you'd even applied for it. I
will say, how can I explain it? Because it wasn't like this supreme confidence in myself as an assistant. I actually really thought I'm not that great of an assistant. I mean, I think I'm being hard on myself, but for the things I had to do with Mari or with Jan, I didn't feel that great as an administrative assistant. I failed typing in college. I hated filing. So I was that person who had a big stack of pile of things to file under my desk. I would forget phone calls. So I didn't think of myself as a fantastic assistant. I was very good with people. When I made cappuccinos, Jan had this really high-end Italian cappuccino. I would burn it every single time for 4 years. I mean, I just was like not fantastic at some of those elements. Yet when I worked with Oprah as a chief of staff chief of staff executive assistant, and managed her team in her office, so a team of 5 assistants, hair and makeup team, aviation, coordinating, security, aviation, that I was good at, because I was the go-between between her and the teams. So I would get the information, delegate it to the teams, get the information back, give it to her. And I traveled with her, and we just got along fantastically. So that I'm good at. The administrative stuff, to this day, I don't know how to do a PowerPoint or spreadsheet or Excel or anything. I have no clue. So
I knew we had things in common, Libby.
Right? High five, Kelly. Yeah.
The other thing I'm amazed at is it must have been so daunting for you because it was Oprah, but also you had no experience as a chief of staff person, did you?
No, I didn't even know what that meant. I really did not know what that meant. So when I got the job, one, I just want to say, when you said, how did you get the job? Yes, it's what you just heard, how that all came about. And I really believe it's important to say that prayer, again, whether someone listening believes in God or energy, or they think it's my decisions and that's it, let's not worry about what to call it. When you align with that higher self, whether you call it the higher self within you or God or the universe, to me, that was the thing that unblocked me, that allowed that opportunity to come to me. Because backing up a little bit, 6 months prior, my mom, so I'm still sending the writing submissions to Rosie O'Donnell. My mother said to me, this is 6 months before I got the job with Oprah. My mom said, Elizabeth, why don't you send your resume to Oprah? Her magazine came out. You love it. I was obsessed with O Magazine. It came out on my birthday, April 17th, 2000 was the premiere issue when O Magazine hit the stands on my birthday, my 34th birthday. I took the day off from work. I got the magazine, coffee, croissant, and I spent 4 hours reading it, right? Because I'm a slow reader. I have to read over and over. I loved it. I talked to everyone about that magazine. And I had grown up kind of watching her on People Are Talking in Baltimore, and then the Oprah Winfrey Show in 1986 when it launched. So I loved Oprah. So my mom said, why don't you send your resume to Oprah? I mean, the Rosie O'Donnell people aren't responding to you. And my response was, Mom, first of all, whoever is Oprah's assistant, why would they ever leave that job? Why would anybody leave that job? That was number one. And number two, I love living in New York City. My girlfriend's here. My friends are here. I love my apartment in the West Village. I don't want to move to Chicago. So I just shut it down. Meaning the opportunity came through my mother. So the universe, God, source speaks to you in so many different ways. The message came through my mother and I was like, what do you know? And I just shut her down. And I thought, that's ridiculous. I'm not going to do that. Well, when I got the job, I ended up asking someone what happened to the person that was here before. That person had left, and that person left 1 month before my mom said that to me. Why don't you send your resume to Oprah? So had I said, yeah, you know what, that's a good point. I do love Oprah. What if I got to lose? I'm just going to send my resume. I know they would have called me because I had the talk show experience and the magazine publishing experience. And she had a talk show and a magazine. And so it just came through 6 months later in another, through that networking group. So I say that to share that story because it's so important to understand that it's not just me, this humanness. It's when I align myself with God's source universe, something outside of myself, and I'm open to the possibilities, that's when life happens. That's where the magic happens. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. And you telling that story about your mum and then the way it all ended up playing out, you were absolutely meant to go and be there, weren't you?
Yes, I believe so. And I truly love, love, love Oprah. I loved every day working there. I mean, I say to people like, my mind was here and she just took my mind and went, like just expanded my world in so many ways. Growing up in this teeny little town in Maryland, of 3,000 people, not being a particularly great student academically. And then at 34, going to her world and just traveling back and forth to South Africa 23 times with her when she was building the Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy for girls there, meeting Nelson Mandela, meeting Dr. Maya Angelou, all these, being by Oprah's side, for 11 years and learning from her and observing her, how she works with people, how she treated everybody the same, whether it was, Bill Gates or a president of the United States or a prime minister or president of another country or the housekeeping staff in a hotel or the servers in a restaurant. Everybody she treated the same with dignity and respect. And also, I would say, watching her be herself with everyone in all situations freed me to be more of myself, to just continue to be more and more of myself, because I saw how powerful that was when she was that way. That's what makes Oprah Oprah.